Thank you for joining us. My name is Nancy Ralsma with On Point TV and Quilting with Nancy. If you've not joined us before in any of our episodes, we are working on the Great Lakes Voyage, also lovingly known as the Learning to Quilt 2. Why did we call it Learning to Quilt 2? Because there's a Learning to Quilt 1. And in Learning to Quilt 1, I take you back from the very, very basics, all through a lot of different techniques that are not covered in Learning to Quilt 2. Now, if you are a brand new quilter, you might want to even consider going all the way back to the Great Basics. The Great Basics is just a simpler quilt. It's got just one technique for the block, but I do take you through all the different steps. And of course, both of these have full videos on the channel. So if you go to OnPoint-TV on YouTube, you're going to be able to see them all. We are now working on Learning to Quilt 2, Great Lakes Voyage. You know what just occurred to me? Do you know why it's Great Lakes Voyage? Because we live in Michigan, and Michigan is surrounded by the Great Lakes, one of the 1 million things that I love about my state. So today, we're going to do reverse applique. In our first session, we talked about color, and then we talked about doing the Mariner's Compass. So this is the new Mariner's Compass that I have made. And today we're going to work on the reverse applique, which is this section here. And I just want to give you an idea when you're choosing your colors that this is where the Mariner's Compass and the reverse applique meet up, so you want this color to be something very complementary. Obviously not this. If you're looking at the quilt here, this is where I chose to use that smaller print version of the large print, and then the reverse applique has the light color underneath it. So let's move these out of the way and talk to you a little bit about the tools that we will be using. For this technique, it is, by all intents and purposes, needle turn applique. So I'm going to take you through that process and try to get you the very best close-ups that I possibly can so that you can get a really nice, smooth, small stitch for your applique. But these are the tools that we're going to use to do that. So I have a clover needle threader. We'll be using a size 10 Roxanne's between needle that you'll get a close-up look at later on. Some silk thread. Now I'm going to use a black silk thread in hopes that you'll be able to actually see my stitch. Some thread magic makes the thread not twist up so much. And a sharp pair of scissors. And again, I'll give you a close-up view on them because this is a pair from Dovo that I really love. And our Boheen white chalking pencil. And starting with our freezer paper. So the quilter's freezer paper is a freezer paper that's already cut into 8.5 by 11, so you can just print it right off on your printer. And that's what I've done here. This is the design that comes with the quilt. You can just take this and print it out. It'll have all of your leaves and all of your circles. After you've printed them out, you want to cut them out as smoothly as possible so that they'll be able to go down onto your piece. This is the actual fabric layers that we will be working on. Why layers? Because it has two. It has a full complete square of the light color that I call the under fabric. And then the next fabric, in this case, is darker. It's a little ombre, so I'm really curious to see how this is going to work in my design. You will see with me. We'll all find out together. So I've got the two layers together. Now, I do want a little word of warning. You know how I'm always telling you, oh, I poked that needle right in my hand. Let me put that back there. Put it over here at a safe distance. Yeah, I'm always telling you about using the Mary Ellen's Best Press. You know, I'll spray that a lot of times on my different pieces before I start, but not if you want to do hand applique. With hand applique, you need those edges to be biased and to be bendy, if you will. So no spray sizing this before you start. But you do want to baste these layers together. Now, part of it can be done with machine basting, and then another part needs to be done by hand. So you want to, because this particular reverse applique is actually two sections. So if you look up here at the quilt, it's this section and this section all in one square. So you have two of these squares to do. I took the two layers, put them together, and I folded them right down the diagonal with the iron. So then I could go to my sewing machine and I machine basted all the way around the edge and on either side of the diagonal line. that got my little basics all secure. Let me move this out of the way. And the next part needs to be done by hand. So you want to fuse your freezer paper templates down, and then using your boheen, the white chalk, you want to trace around those designs. You want the line to be something that you can see. Now, I think that when I pull this off, you might not be able to see it, but I can see it, and that's all that matters. You want to do that around each of these pieces. Now that I've traced around them, I need to hand baste them down. Now, you might say, why can't you do this basting by machine also? I found that it just kind of wrinkles up the fabric too much. It just doesn't work as well. So I'm going to use that heavyweight hand quilting thread that I used in the last segment for making my perfect circles, and a larger needle. So this is going to be just a regular sharp. And I've got my knot at the end of it. And I'm just going to make a running stitch along the edge of each element. Now that should be about 1/4 of an inch away, is going to be plenty of space. Don't go too much farther than 1/4 of an inch. That'll be too far. And if you go too close, you will not be able to turn the edges. So just take your time working around each element. So I've got all my basting done all the way around my pieces, and you might think to yourself, hey, this shot looks a little different. That's because we need extreme close-ups for you to be able to see this stitch. So before we start the extreme close-up on the stitch, let's extreme close-up on the tools. So this is a clover needle threader. I don't know, could be the most amazing modern technology I have, well, outside of maybe my iPhone. This is going to thread my needle, and you're going to be marveled and amazed. Now, the needle I use is a Roxanne's needle, a 10 between. What does that mean? That means this baby is small. There she is. So compared to my thimble, you can see how small it is. Now, I think the size 10 is important. That's the diameter of the needle. So having a small diameter is really important to get your best applique stitch. It also is short. It's a between. For me, and the majority of the students that I've spoken to, if they use a large needle, they get a large stitch. Now, having said that, I know some fabulous appliqueurs that use long needles, fat needles, all sorts of different ones. But for me, this is the rockinest needle. So I'm going to take this needle and I'm going to put the eye side down in the number 1 position of the clover needle threader. Now I'm going to take my silk thread. This thread is from YLI. Now there are other companies that have silk thread that is 100 weight. Honestly, I've used a couple of different ones. They're all really good. Just make sure it's 100 weight. That means it's very, very fine, and that's what we want to make our stitches hide. I'm going to take my thread and I'm going to cut off a length, and I try not to cut it off too long, but I normally fail with that. I use the little cutter here. Now I'm going to take and place my thread between this little groove, put my fingers on either side, push the magic button, and say, voila, the needle is threaded. Whoops, do you see that thread right there? So now I'm going to pull that out. And now I'm going to create my top lock. So I need a knot to be right on top of that needle. So I'm going to take my thread, I cross my thread with my needle. My needle is now on top of my thread. I'm going to wrap it around that thread, hold that knot. Now when I pull this down to the bottom, watch that needle. Do you see the thread? Right there. Now I have a knot on the bottom of that needle so that the thread will not come unthreaded from the needle. Now I'm going to make a knot on the other side. So this is what we call a quilter's knot. There I've trapped the thread between my needle and my finger again. And I'm going to wrap this. Oh, because the silk thread is so fine, I wrap it quite a few times, maybe 8 times. Then hold that wrapping while I pull the needle through. Now that needle is passing through all those little loop-de-doops I made. Whoops. And there it is. Now I have a nice, here, let's put it there. There, we can see it, the big knot. I'm going to take and cut that off. So it's just not too long. The next thing I'm going to do, actually I usually do it before I knot it, but I forgot, is to run my silk thread through the Thread Magic. Now Thread Magic is a silicone. It's just this kind of rubbery sort of silicone. Take your thread, put your thumb over it, and run it through. That is going to coat the thread with a little bit of silicone that is going to keep it from twisting and possibly breaking. Although I think the most important thing to keep that from happening is to cut a short piece. Now is time for my thimble. This is my thimble of choice. This is a little pink thimble from Dritz, and it fits on my finger. You want to put it on your middle finger is where I see most people, but you know what? If it feels good on your pinky, wear it on your pinky. I like this one because it lets my nail come out so that it's not being pushed on the tip, and it is adjustable so it always feels comfortable. I lose these all the time, so I usually buy them in boxes of 6. Scissors are the last tool. So this is a Karen K. Buckley pair of precision scissors. Now keep in mind, she has a pair that's even sharper at the point. I don't think that one works as well. I really like this orange handle one. And if you can, this is the dreamiest pair of applique scissors on the entire planet. These are from a company called Dovo. D-O-V-O. And what I love about it, first of all, it's this really strong sterling silver stuff. But look at the tips. It's got a pointed tip. There. Got a pointed tip and a blunt tip. And when I show you why I love that blunt tip, you're going to go, hey, that makes sense. Word of warning, these are not cheap scissors. All right. So now we're going to go into position. So the first thing I need to do is cut out the inside of this leaf. Now, here is my drawn line. I am going to cut it out approximately an 1/8 inch inside that drawn line. So I take the point of my Dovo scissors and just till I can feel I'm only through the top layer, and I make a little nip. Now I'm going to flip my Dovo scissors over so I've got that blunt side on the bottom, and just like this, I'm going to cut out approximately an 1/8 inch all the way around. Now we're trying to get you the best shots without my hands in it, so bear with us. Trim this out. And I love that blunt tip because it keeps me from accidentally cutting my bottom layer. How do I know that's possible? Because I've done it. All right. So we cut that out. Now I'm going to nip all the way to the point for this leaf. So you see that my scissors go all the way to the drawn point, and I'm going to do that on the other side. And now to get the smoothest curves, I clip all the way around the edge. This has some straight edges, some bias edges, and if you were to actually analyze your fabric and go, oh no, that's a straight edge, I need to clip it. That's a bias edge, I don't need to clip it. You could do that. It just takes too long. So when there's a curve like this, I just nip the entire thing, and I'd say these nips are, they're not an 1/8 of an inch, but they're not so far away as a 1/4 of an inch either. In a second here, I'll show you a pretty good view. So that's the nips. Do you see that? There. All right. That's how much I nip it because I want that fabric to be able to fold. Now it's time for my stitch. I'm going to take my needle. It's got the knot on the end of it. I like to take and kind of fold my fabric up so that it can fit into my left hand. I am right-handed. I'm going to take my needle and go underneath so that the knot will be under the fabric. There's my knot. Okay. Now I take my needle and I turn this inside. So you can take your needle and just kind of swipe it along as you go. Some people use a toothpick. Some people use just their finger, or they'll grab a stiletto. I just use the needle. Hence, this is called needle turn applique. Now, after you've gotten a nice area, I do like to kind of finger crease it down. It gives me just a nice crease. And now I'm going to make the stitch. So let's see if we can get this so that you can really see what I'm doing. So I like to have my left thumbnail right in front of the thread. So here's the thread right here, and my left thumbnail's maybe 1/4 of an inch away. Keep in mind, I am intentionally using a black thread so that hopefully you can see it. If I was really doing this, I would be using maybe my creamy taupey color. So when I go up, I'm catching just the tiniest corner, maybe 2 threads of the fold, then pulling it up. When I put my needle back down in, I'm trying to go in, and I'm just maybe a smidgen going under the green fabric till I travel 1/8 of an inch and come back up. And that is the stitch. Now, there's lots of ways to know if you're doing it right, mainly by if you cannot see the thread. So I'm going to turn this a little bit as I go. So when I take this stitch, and this is a black thread, and I pull it, you really cannot see it. My thread has hidden. Now that has partly to do with the nature of the silk thread. It's just so fine that it really hides. Now sometimes you can take 2 stitches in a row. That's what I do when I'm rushing, and I can do okay, but inevitably if I do that, I'm going to end up like right here. I'll poke down and I'll end up going right through the other part of the neat thread, and then I got to do a whole nother one, and that's no fun. So let me work my way around to this point, and I'll show you what we do on a point. So I've made my stitching all the way through here, and I'm to the point. So when it comes to the point, you want to take some smaller stitches as you get to the point. And with this stitch, I'm going to take it and come to the point, and I am passing that point by maybe 3 threads into the point. Now I'm going to go directly into the point and go back to my left. Now I'm going to turn this edge. Got to try and do it from this angle. This is not easy. Got to get that last little thread in there. Again, I'm going to go into the point. Oops, I can't see. And come up on the right-hand side. Okay. So I started here. I went into the point, or past the point, came up past the point, went into the point and went to my left, went into the point and went to my right, and then I'm ready to turn. So up we go. And now again, I'm going to take my piece, and I'm going to roll this up so I can hold on to it like this and keep it. I like how I put it between my fingers. I don't know why I do it that way. I just do it that way. But it keeps it all contained. Now using my needle, I'm going to run it along that edge so it'll fold in. I'm going to go back to the point and then come up to the fold. Now this going out of the point and doing the points is the main reason that some applique artists try to match their thread to their fabric. And that's a viable method. The thing about applique is this is how I do it. There are so many different applique teachers that I highly recommend that you take lessons from, 3 to 50 of them. I have some of my friends that are the best hand appliqueurs. They used to go to an entire applique week where every day they learned applique methods from different teachers. But that's it. That's how you do it. All right. Now I do want to show you on the back a little bit, and that's why I also chose the black thread. Do you see how the thread travels along? So every stitch is coming all the way down and then back up. So you shouldn't see little skips between the stitches. And when you get good, this will really make one solid straight line. There you go. So that's how I do my hand applique. I would continue on this piece, cutting out the circle, clipping all the edges, and continuing to do that. So imagine I have all my stitching done. You see here I still got a few more to go. But after you get all the stitching done, you want to take out all of the basting stitches, the machine stitching and the hand stitching that you did around each of the elements. And then want to give your piece a little pressing with your spray sizing. So it doesn't need to be a saturated pressing, but just something to kind of flatten everything out. And now it's time to trim it. For this particular quilt, I need to trim a 14-inch square. And because remember, this is two parts. This is like this and this. I need to cut it right down the middle. But before I do that, I want to cut it into the 14-inch square I need. So I've got the diagonal line of my ruler running between the two elements, like the circle. I'm going, all right, that one's there, that looks even. And then I use some of my glow tape, the Omni-Grid glow tape that I use on the ruler so often, and I place that down the diagonal of 14 inches so I can say, all right, that one's on the point of the leaf, this one's on the point of the leaf, I'm ready to trim. So squaring it up on the two sides. Then I'm going to turn it around, put it right into 14 inches, and square up on the other sides. And then for this piece, I have to now cut it on the diagonal. So I should use my longer ruler, but I'm just going to cheat. There we go. Whoops, I moved. We all know we don't want to do that. There. There. After you cut it in half, now you're going to want to remove the underlayer. So that was that underlayer of the fabric. So you'll go in and cut it so that it's maybe, I do like to use my, I would use my Dovo scissors if I could find them, but I can't. So I'll use these ones. And I want to trim it so it's about 1/4 of an inch away, being extra careful, like I'm trying to be because I don't have my other scissors, to not cut that top fabric. You'd have to redo the whole thing, and I don't want you to have to do that. So you'll trim all the way around each element. So it'll be like that. And then this piece, in this particular quilt, will be ready to be attached to our mariner's compass. So it will be just like that. Now, if you have the book, then you know that the next steps are to add the border going around this section, and then you'll add your large setting triangles with the large flowers to it there. But these are the steps for the reverse applique. When we come back next time, I will be teaching you how to do blanket stitch applique, and that's done with a fusible webbing and machine stitching. Oh, there it is. All the way around all of the elements. If you like this, I hope that you'll give us a thumbs up and leave us a comment. If you have any questions, my email is quiltingwithnancy@gmail.com, and the book is available for purchase on our website, www.onpoint-tv.com. Have a great night.